Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. How are we doing today? I hope we are all doing fairly well. I'm actually doing pretty well myself. I've had some pretty daggum good news. I mentioned it before, but I was interviewing for a new position, and I actually got the offer letter back, which is fantastic. Let's see. Sounds like we are a little bit low. Just gonna jockey this around since I haven't loaded up Mahoutsukai in a minute. Maybe turn a little bit down, maybe about half. Alright. So I wanted, since it's been a little bit of a second since we played some more Mahoutsukai no Yoru, I wanted to play a little bit more of this game, because I do genuinely love it. Let me get the little model up here. There we are. Now I can say hello to you guys. Alright. So if you guys remember last time, we have been building up to our climax, or a climax in the story, because while it was hinted at to Alice and Alco that Soujurou, our intrepid main character and protagonist, well, I suppose tritagonist is really the correct term for him, but it was suspected that he might be the one who had overseen some magic shenanigans. But after a short but intense search, both Alco and Alice came to the conclusion that it was indeed him. And now Alco has laid a trap. So let's see if our boy is actually going to make it out in one piece. Because one thing is for sure, with the stories in the Nasuverse, nobody is ever safe. Soujurou returned to his apartment on foot as per routine, under a blanket of clouds in the night sky. The rusty stairs of his apartment building clanged with each step. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see the bicycles parked by the apartment's building's outer wall. He debated the pros and cons of a bicycle, how much easier life would be versus the expense, the convenience versus the necessity, but in the end decided one was not right for him just now. He should reconsider. That's a game changer. Clutching the bag of apples under his arm, he took out the key to his residence. He tilted his head in confusion. More and more he found himself preoccupied with such random thoughts, when the real issue at hand was deciding what to do with the apples he had received. A little backstory for you guys, if you're just joining in. Our boy Soujurou here was raised in some kind of monastic assassin training mischief out in the mountains, and had never even encountered anything of modern life, no electricity, no nothing, and was essentially kicked out for going, man, what if there's other stuff going on out there besides the village? He placed the paper bag by the sink and switched on the lights. It was just after 10 in the evening. With the end-of-term exams just around the corner, he had come home an hour earlier than usual. As he made back for the kitchen to pick one of the apples to snack on, he found an envelope stuffed in his mail slot. The envelope had no name, return address, or stamp. Inside was a single piece of paper that had only the sender's name and a short message. It read, "Ooh, I hate to interrupt, but NightReign did just finish downloading for me. Go get NightReign if you're a FromSoft nerd like I am. That's what I'm going to be doing after stream." Okay, now let's continue. A concise set of orders, neatly written. It was signed Alco Awazaki, who has been nothing but an asshole to poor Soujurou this whole time, despite being an absolute angel of a human. She had been considerate enough to enclose a detailed map of the meeting place. Puzzled, he cocked his head to the side, then headed out the door. Afterward, upon the room's sole tenant leaving the premises, the envelope burst into flames and evaporated without a trace, as though it had never existed in the first place. We're going to have a murder. By the late 80s, Japan's post-war economic boom had somewhat stabilized, and the city experienced a period of steady growth, which is actually real. The Japan economic bubble was a thing of absolute insanity. It took the world by storm if you go back and are a numbers nerd like I am. It's very fascinating to learn about. Alternatively, play the Yakuza games and you'll kind of get an idea of that too. And much more stylish. The city's modernization marched on, and the Japan Railway's train station, a symbol of the new era, neared completion. In Misaki's neighboring town of Yashirogi, a new symbol of its own was about to be born. Yashirogi bred and Kitsuland. It was Misaki's worst investment. Could have told you that from the name. Years later, it would be dubbed the fool's gold of the economic bubble, a relic of a bygone age. 10 years ago, Yashirogi's renowned Tokitsu Baking Company ran factories all across the nation. Its proprietor was a middle-aged gentleman, then age 56, by the name of Yurihiko Tokitsu, known affectionately by most as Toppan. He took it upon himself to begin development on an estate on the outskirts of Yashirogi and broke ground on a recreational wonderland that he hoped to be the pride of Misaki City. The long-awaited opening came in 1981. After 3 years of investment, this local amusement park, full of all kinds of hopes and dreams, began its short-lived tenure. It covered more than 85 square acres. Its magnificent merry-go-round dazzled all who passed through the park's gates. Its roller coaster twisted and turned about the edges of the park like a writhing Japanese dragon. Its Ferris wheel, packed beyond necessity with gimmicks, was said to have tested the limits of modern engineering. Spoiler alert, it was not perfect. Old Yurihiko looked upon his creation and smiled. Only boosting his confidence was the fact that its grand opening was staged during a period of prosperity, the springtime of the world. But, in spite of this, they splendidly miscalculated the balance between aspirations and sophistication. Its mascot, Kitsu, was poorly designed and appeared like a cheap knockoff. The park was stuffed to the brim with bread stands. Even its impossible-to-navigate mirror maze seemed out of date from the start. There are no dreams to be had at Kitsuland, only nightmarish satire. Numerous trade magazines lambasted Kitsuland's shortcomings, and customer attendance declined. There was even an incident where a 6-year-old strayed from his mother, had an accident, and nearly died. It's kind of messed up, but I wonder if it played out like that one Dane Cook skit. You know, the one where the chick punts a dude's head? If you know, you know. Money. On top of everything, Yurihiko, who had bet everything on the success of mascot Kitsu, retired, and Kitsuland's operations were officially in trouble. And thus, amidst the scorn of nearly all residents of the area, ended Misaki City's one and only amusement park. What's more, perhaps best described as a footnote in the debacle, the self-proclaimed Parisian artist who designed the mascot, Toki Julich, was said to have snapped his brush in mourning over the closure of the park. Returning to the present, it was midnight, and the Kitsuland of today was a shadow of its former glory. Like a doll abandoned in the corner of a toy box, the lonely park was illuminated only by the light of the town that continued to live around it. Soujurou closed the Yashirogi guidebook that he picked up on the way here. The story of its history was almost difficult to believe, but he supposed this is what people referred to as entropy. The park's front gate was unlocked. When he worked here the previous time, the iron fence was locked shut with a rusty chain, but the chain was nowhere to be seen and the gate left ajar. Following the map drawn in the letter, Soujurou quickly made his way inside. Let's actually move the voices up just a hair. There we go. Alright. Soujurou complained, quite out of character for him. Soujurou has been quite a brick. It was probably because, in spite of his naivety, even he knew that something was amiss. Though the park was abandoned, this was still trespassing. Unlawful entry, larceny, burglary. These were certainly not things, or perhaps crimes, that Soujurou was proud to do, but... Money, apparently, was why his conscience was gnawing at him. He clapped his hands in apology towards the statue of Kitsi, on whose eyes the paint had begun to aptly dissolve. Soujurou passed the mascot bleeding red paint from its eye sockets and began to walk the night park. The building's colors had faded. The collection of machines was rusted. The man-made residents no longer felt the passage of time. Even the ghosts themselves could not endure the disparity between this forsaken place and its previous grand stature. It was like a fossilized dream. These were the ruins of a paradise both created and abandoned by man and reality. The economy had stabilized, and the standard of living was on the rise. Nobody was overly concerned with the future. These were the remains of a wild and exciting era. His breath turned to white mists in front of him. Soujurou continued through the abandoned amusement park. Though void of human presence, this was not nearly as frightening as the darkness deep in the mountains. The city suburbs can take many different forms, but Kitsi Land was unusual for an amusement park, insomuch as it had been built adjacent to a residential district. The park was surrounded by a forest, but even that, ultimately, was man-made. It was no different from the curtains on a classroom window. If he were to scale the iron fence encircling Kitsi Land and break through the 20 yards of forested trees, he could make it back to the familiar townscape. Though the amusement park tended to rouse dread in the city folk, to Soujurou it was little different from the commotion and terror of downtown. The central plaza was as silent as a grave. According to the map, the meeting spot was west of here. Waiting for Soujurou at his destination was a rugged, imposing, magnificent castle, towering before the black drop of the cloudy night sky. Even for an abandoned park, it was a remarkable structure. If the roller coasters and the Ferris wheel were loud, intense attractions, this was comparatively quiet and easygoing. It was one of Kitsyland's 3 iconic structures and, in a way, the wicked fortress that guided this paradise down the path of closure. Generally speaking, amusement park mazes generally fell into one of 2 categories. Labyrinths, which disorient visitors with their sheer size, and mirror houses, which disorient visitors with optical illusions. Many of the labyrinth's guests enjoyed the brief sense of adventure that it afforded. Over the years, however, it would be usurped by the ever-increasing thrills of new attractions. Such was the way of all trends, the curse of fads. The new must give way to the newer. On the other hand, the House of Mirrors was a time-honored, beloved staple. Even within the confines of a classroom's dimensions, well-placed mirrors and well-directed light could both perplex and delight its visitors. And figuring in the cost of maintenance, a well-designed House of Mirrors could far outlive its labyrinth brethren. Even if both types faded into obscurity, they would remain a staple of what constituted an amusement park. However, that didn't mean that combining them would produce double the fun. Together, they transformed from entertainment into an uncanny realm from which those who dared to step within could never leave. In a similar sense, Kitsy's Mystery Tour Castle was the park's very own other world. Indeed, 5% of visitors ended up requesting staff assistance to get out. Modeled after European castles, it was greater than a football field in length, and the interior was split into 3 floors. 2 floors above ground, 1 below, lined with mirrors from top to bottom, equal parts complex and vast. The maze demanded at least 30 minutes, even from veterans. One visit was all it took to be struck by claustrophobia for hours. It was this labyrinth that now stood in Soujurou's way. It seemed that Soujurou, unaware of what a house of mirrors even was, concerned himself only with its lighting. He checked the letter from Aoko once more. The letter read, "I will be waiting in the first floor lobby of the House of Mirrors." That meeting place was definitely here. There was something to see by, at least, as he could just make out light faintly through the open doors. Putting aside his suspicions, he headed towards the entrance. A poor choice. The sound of his footsteps against the brick-laid path echoed faintly. He was far from the hustle and bustle of the city. The park's clocks no longer made tick nor tock, and the winter's bite no longer blew in the night. From within the silence, the stillness that would cause any onlooker to hold their breath. Soujurou stopped abruptly at the entrance to the House of Mirrors. This fucking guy. He called out, turning back towards the plaza. A sound rang out, as if someone had dove behind a garbage can, and it fell to the ground in their haste. A short silence ensued. For a moment, the abandoned park returned to its previous hush. Resigned to her having been exposed, the girl appeared from her hiding place. And there's trouble, ladies and gentlemen. His voice died in his throat as he took in the sight of the girl's familiar face in unfamiliar attire. This Aoko, with her long hair flowing in the breeze, was different from the Aoko that Soujurou knew. The resolute stance and posture, she exuded the strength of her will. She stared directly at him with a sharp-eyed, piercing gaze. Her eyes were glowing with a dim phosphoric light, enough to give Soujurou pause that he might be hallucinating. An icy coldness in a girl's strength. Soujurou lacked a sense of danger, but the sense of imbalance caused even him to feel the malice in the air. It was as though the Yuki-onna spirit of folklore had climbed out from a ghost story and appeared here in reality. And a side note, if you guys aren't familiar with Japanese mythology, a Yuki-onna is a ice spirit, typically taking the form of a beautiful lady. And there are several of varying degrees of horror stories that you can listen to if you are interested in that. They're very interesting. They're one of my favorite bits of Japanese folklore. But I digress. Instinctively, Soujurou took a step back. Surprised, he was starting to feel concerned. An unpleasant premonition rose to the surface, bringing with it a sense of anxiety. In spite of this, he felt obliged to honor urban etiquette by seeing if she was alright. This poor boy does not know he's about to get shot in the face. Let's see what happens. Without acknowledging him, Aoko took a step forward. Her figure, this atmosphere, Soujurou found himself recalling a recent memory. His twisted, knotted apprehension melted away and was replaced with a growing realization. The girl before him was very similar to someone he had seen before. That night in the park, though he had only seen her from behind. With increasing certainty causing him to swallow nervously, he noted that they might as well have been identical.
何をしていたかって話なら見ての通りよ。ここで獲物が通り過ぎるのを待ってたの。あなたが入ってから私も入って逃げ道をなくす。
Alco said, perturbed by the swift change in plans. This guy. Soujurou was mightily relieved he had not gone to the wrong place. It was unclear whether he felt confident about dealing with what was to come, or if he had simply failed to grasp the hopelessness of the situation. Alco ignored his obtuse response and continued.
私はね、しずき君。嫌いな人とか憎い人とかは人並みにいるんだ。ただ、ちょっと変なのが敵になるやつの条件でね。
I'm going to file this interaction under the worst thing she could say is no. False. Cold emotion burned in her eyes. Her feet had already moved one step closer to Soujurou. Soujurou's sense of foreboding was growing stronger. Wondering if what he sensed was bloodlust, he retreated another step. Continuing as so, they maintained a distance of just 15 feet. Ooh, 21-foot rule. For those of you who don't know what that is the rough distance that someone can travel running at full tilt to you before you're able to draw a gun and break off a shot if you're unprepared. So that is what we like to call the danger zone.
私は嫌いな相手でも敵と思ったことはなかったの。でも逆に好きな相手を敵だと思うこともあった。理由は単純。
She held her right arm out. The light about her was no illusion.
当たり前のことだけど、私は私の感情を乱すやつが敵なのよ。
Her arm moved again. It was instantaneous. This girl got a freaking Glock! Something shot past Soujurou in the blink of an eye, missing him by just a foot to his left. Before his eyes, a blue light, something akin to a fireball, had ignited from nothing. He finally understood what was happening. She ignored his dim-witted reaction. Naoko muttered to herself. The fist-sized hole the blue light had made in the House of Mirrors crackled and smoldered. A shot like that could easily cave in a human skull, in addition to burning it to a crisp. We're going to file that comment under useful later. Soujurou backed away swiftly. Things were beyond incomprehensible. He was close to losing the ability to think at all. Not that he had much before. All he could make out was the figure of a dependable student council president, or at least what he had thought was the president, and the memories of the park that night 2 days ago. He had never experienced anything like this, though most people living in a civilized country would have never seen anything like it either. A lethal weapon that could kill with nothing more after. Here's only what came next. Oh, there we go. I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're back now. As we were saying, there was no before, there was no after, there's only what came next. This was a very common thought process for anyone staring down the barrel of a gun.
命乞いはやめてね。意味でも恨み事ならご自由に。殺す側の義務として一言一句聞いてあげる。
By saying it was pointless, she made it sound more like she would not listen to what he had to say. However, Soujurou was in such a state of shock that it did not even enter his mind to speak up. Been there before. All he knew, for reasons unknown, was that the girl in front of him wanted him dead.
嘘つきにも程がある。飛び丸のバカ。何がそんな生き物はいないだ。実際いるじゃないか、こんなお化けみたいなのが。
Soujurou felt that if he had said that out loud, the second blast would come even quicker than the last, so he kept it to himself. His mental expletive stirred his mind from paralysis to mere panic. This response came not from confidence, however. Someday, out of the blue, someone is going to kill me. While it may have seemed like a baseless belief to hold,
そうだった。都会には殺人事件がある。ルールを破れば殺されるのは当たり前だってちゃんと教えてもらってた。
well, he's 50-50 on that. To Soujurou, the situation seemed to perfectly align with his inexperienced understanding that the city was a coldly pragmatic place. As far as he was concerned at this moment, being killed by a classmate was not something to be so surprised by. That depends on where you're from, my friend. In a society where murder was possible, he was able to accept this sort of situation as natural. Of virtually no concern was the series of events that led to Aoko's aggression toward him. The only thing that truly confused him was Aoko's blue fireball. She's a Street Fighter character. Just roll with it, bro. Soujurou swallowed an audible gulp. To anyone who may have been watching, it was the response of a victim paralyzed by fear.
そういうことよ。ようやく理解してくれたわね。多くは語らないけど、あなたにはここで死んでもらう。
Ice cold.
魔術が隠匿するものなんて言っても、そっちには関係のないことだし。
Which has a little bit of
運がなかったって思えばいい。
catch up again for you guys. In the Nasuverse, which encompasses the Fate series of stories, this story, Mahoutsukai no Yoru, Witch on the Holy Night, and Kara no Kyokai, Garden of Sinners, anything to do with magic is very, very tightly regulated by a couple different associations of mages, principally the Clock Tower. And if anybody of the mundane world who is not associated with magic witnesses it, it is grounds for immediate execution, or kidnapping. Kidnapping is also on the menu sometimes, but we'll get to that later. Done talking, Aoko once again lifted her right arm. There was a hum like a machine. Blue light began to revolve around her arm beneath her sleeve. This was taking longer than last time, leading Soujurou to believe that it was going to be much stronger than the attack that was still scorching the wall behind him. The realization caused his panic to heighten.
いや、なんだ、つまり始末するとかしないとか、あの夜のお化けは青崎だったとか、都会は本当に込み入ってるとか、そういうことじゃなくて。
His thoughts became jumbled. His heart pounded like a hammer. This was no time to be standing still. He was not sure if the girl in front of him was really human. And more importantly, even if he could accept the events unfolding before him, when all was said and done...
待て、人殺しはいけないんだぞ。
Wait, it's wrong to kill people. This and more sage remarks from Nasuver's protagonist at 11. Even if it was a fact of life in the city, Soujurou was not about to lie down and die. Soujurou's scream, still entirely oblivious, was just the thing to invoke Aoko's full wrath. Better move! Aoko fired a barrage of magical blue bullets. In an instant, Soujurou dashed into the shadows behind him, into the entrance to the House of Mirrors. Right into her trap. He darted feverishly down the hall. After a few feet, he was left completely out of breath. This was due to his shock at seeing yet another attack, fiercer than the first, that he had never seen in his life. And because he couldn't shake the thought that if he had moved even a second later, he would be dead. He could not afford to stop. The sound of merciless footsteps closed in behind him. He threw everything into his legs as he sprinted. A straight, narrow passage, about 60 feet long, connected the entrance to the main lobby. At this rate, if he could just make it to the lobby, he was sure he would be able to find as many hiding spots as he needed.
助かった。
He arrived in a large, open space. This was the first floor lobby. There were 3 passageways. One led to the basement, one connected to the first floor maze. The other was a set of stairs leading to the second floor. Soujurou did not particularly care about which one he chose, so, trusting his intuition, he made a run for the first floor maze when he smacks his head into a transparent wall.
鏡。
ええ、面倒だけどそれならフェアでしょ。追いかける方にも逃げる方にも有利不利がある。
A somehow cheerful voice echoed in his direction. There was no need for Soujurou to even...
1階の奥にある出口は封鎖しといたから。結界じゃなくて物理的にやりすぎて封鎖っていうより瓦礫？土砂崩れ？どっちでもいっか。とにかく下手に出口に近づくと崩落に巻き込まれるから。生き埋めが嫌なら近寄らないことね。
Panicked by the impending footsteps, Soujurou groped for the wall. He could see the stairs to the second floor. He did not understand what Alco had meant earlier, but he at least knew that the first floor was not going to save him.
ま、私としてはそっちのが助かるけど。
That's the face of a murderer right there.
形式上、事故死の方が後始末とか楽だから。
Behind him was a creature beyond words. As she continued her idle taunting, she lifted her right arm ostentatiously. Even from above her clothes, one could see some kind of strange, incongruous pattern upon her body. The veins beneath her skin, they made it seem as though something inhuman was circulating her body. Whether out of pity or repulsion, Soujurou stopped for just a moment. His pursuer evaded his
ああ、
gaze.
これ？普段は塗り薬で隠しているんだけど、今日は特別。魔術刻印って言ってね、魔術師の証みたいなものよ。ほら、光が回ってるでしょ？これがさっきのスナップ。今日は調子いいし、私魔力を効率よく使うのだけは自信あるし。うん、あと30回ぐらいかな。さっきみたいな装着ができるの。
Perhaps she was on an emotional high, for her voice had become frightfully friendly. The substance of the conversation couldn't have been any more unsettling, however.
そもそも何を言っているかよくわからないんだけど、青崎。
わからない？段数はあと30発ってこと。そこまで逃げ切ればあなたの勝ちよ。とりあえず今日のところはね。
How generous. She's willing to let him go for the day if he managed to escape.
明日もあるのかな。
Soujurou knit his brows. Alco's expression creased into a scowl at his behavior. Although he was panicking, it seemed that deep down, he still did not feel the full weight of the crisis. She knew he still didn't get it.
宣言はしたわ。自由時間はこれでおしまい。まだ罵り足りないだろうけど、ま、その手の時間はキリがないしね。この辺りで諦めて。
It appeared Alco had prepared this theatrical dialogue ahead of time. Not to allow her opponent time for futile pleading, but to give him the time to curse her, his killer. Such forthrightness was her modus operandi. With his victim, however, it was not going as she had hoped.
とにかくそういうことだから。じゃ、狩りの時間と行きましょうか。
Her voice was void of emotion, and her eyes ruthless as they bored into her prey. This time, Soujurou finally accepted that he was going to die. Silent as the dead, it stepped into the remains of a dream that had long since seen no visitors. There was no wind this night, nor a soul to be seen. Still, it heard the echoes from within, clasped its hands together, and grinned. Its form, with hands clasped, resembled that of a budding tulip. The bearing of this artificial flower reflected in the cloudy mirror of the ticket attendant's office next to the gate. Next to it stood a display board, corroded by years upon years of rust. Number of visitors today, 2. Number of blank, today, blank. The board had graffiti crudely scrawled atop one of the words. It was replaced with deaths. The records board had long ago fallen to disrepair. After taking a full 10 seconds to digest what it was looking at, it made its own revision. Number of visitors today, 3. Number of deaths today, 1. After appending this number with an index finger, she smiled like a flower. Then she began to walk towards the source of the sound. It had been 10 minutes since this rhapsody had begun to echo from the House of Mirrors. The amusement park's entrance returned to as it was before, soulless. In the end, even if Soujurou had been the luckiest man alive, there was no way he should have been able to escape. The question, however, was how much of this was by design, and how much was sheer coincidence. Even Alco, who had made all the arrangements, had no answer. Indeed, there were only 3 things that she could say. It was taking longer than expected. He was putting up more resistance than she had anticipated, and that choosing the House of Mirrors had been a mistake. She had really screwed the pooch on this one. The location itself was an excellent choice, as the House of Mirrors was a perfect hunting ground, but seeing her own incompetence reflected in the mirrors was beginning to grate on her. And that, my friends, I think is where we are going to stop for the day. Not in the least bit, because that little soundbite is very funny. But I look forward to continuing with you guys and seeing who our third mysterious murderer, or well, I suppose our second murderer, third guest to the amusement park is going to be, and if our boy Soujurou gets turned into fried chicken. I thank you guys very much for joining me today. I hope to see you guys soon. I am going to disappear, and hopefully you as well, to go and play some NightReign. I think tomorrow I might play some Dark Souls 3. I might play some NightReign, actually, on stream, if it runs well enough. And then, beyond that, who knows? Either way, I had a great time. I enjoyed being here with you guys, and I hope it was a good spot in your day. Hey, we're almost to the weekend. We're almost there, guys. I'll catch you next time. Peace.